Ready to start the meeting? We have a quorum. We have a quorum. First thing we need to do is approve the minutes for the following meetings, the March 9th and the March 20th.
Fund
Time to
they
do.
would, so I will be approved.
Okay, moved and seconded, all in favor?
I,
Aye, all right, that's done. Okay, public comment, items not on the agenda. Yeah. Nobody's on the screen, so.
Jenna, are you able to hear us? Just double checking.
Yes. Yes. Can you hear me?
Great.
Can you hear? Can you hear me? Okay,
Yes.
great. I'm clicking start video and it's not working, but I'm here.
That's okay. We'll be there in a couple of minutes.
Okay.
The public comments, we'll close that and go into items for discussion. The first one is airport history, and Judy Nyron is here to.
Everybody, I'll talk fast. I've got 10 minutes. I do Iowa City history and I've worked with Friends of Historic Preservation, Johnson County Historic Society, etc. And I do the history for Lucas Farms neighborhood. And I have some of my notebooks here. I said I can stay around if anyone wants to get those a little closer afterwards. So most of the aviation history I've discovered as by accident. You know, I started realizing there was enough aviation history in our neighborhood that I needed to start a separate notebook. And it's kind of an odd coincidence that there'd be quite that much history. I have done a special little history display a few years ago during COVID. But our neighborhood sits on the farm of Governor Robert Lucas and was established in 1844. And we have 750 households, and we just added in the last year another 250 from Oak Grove neighborhood, the city consolidated. So we're the largest neighborhood association, and we have the smallest amount of park space. But anyway, I've been at it for quite a long time. My husband and I came to Iowa City back in 1975, and I used to do tours down at Old Capitol, and I've always been interested in the history side, and I also minored in art. So I love it that you're doing a mural. So I just thought that I would highlight a few things, and 90% of the stories come right out of Lucas Farms, people who live there. And Lucas Farms, this is an older map, but is the area Highway 6. Obviously Marketplace is over here, Sycamore Mall, Kirkwood Avenue. Now we say the railroad tracks. This is an older map. So we say the railroad tracks down to Highway 6 and pretty much the railroad tracks on the west side. And most of the history is consolidated in one little area. So, you know, I would offer if you ever wanted to come out for a walking tour, I do hidden history walking tours by subject. And so if you ever wanted to do something, even for a fundraiser, if you did something and then, you know, wanted to include that, I would be more than happy to accommodate that. So anyway, the first character that I've mentioned here is William Rickerby, and he was an English immigrant, and he lived at 811 Florence Street. And he's an interesting character anyway, but he was at the Johnson County Fair when supposedly the first plane came through. Now, I'm not an aviation historian and I'm not an aircraft expert. So when I put these pieces together and I document everything from newspapers usually, so, you know, there may be some arrows, but that's when Captain Baldwin and the Red Devil came, and obviously the Red Devil's in the Smithsonian. And I did see something that's been added to the history. Maybe it was there and I overlooked it.
yeah, I found it. Yeah, and in fact, he flew out of the Iowa City Fairgrounds.
Okay.
And crashed his plane on the second flight.
Right, yes. And I think it was also the first flight over the Mississippi. When you talk about Iowa City being the first airport of the Mississippi, I think that was the first flight over the Mississippi. I read it somewhere. Anyway, so you could recognize that red painted steel, yellow winged, scary piece of equipment. And you may be familiar with a website, Our Iowa Heritage. Marty Bowler, oh man, he's on fire. We kind of connected a few years ago, but he must have a whole staff of historians because he pours out stuff. So that site on the Iowa City Airport has a lot of links, but you may have already seen that. Okay. Then the next one I want to mention is Peter Lentz Farm. And my husband is a veterinarian, so he used to get out in the country and knew some of the farmers at one time. But this farm would have been located somewhere around Sycamore Mall down to Lakeside Apartments. Have you heard about Peter Lentz and his farm? Okay, so the Society number 2, a Curtiss airplane landed there. And it was part of a promotion by Bremer's Golden Eagle. If you've heard of Bremer's downtown, I'm going to pass a couple of things around here. And it talked about this plane with the red checked underbelly that everybody could recognize. And there's quite a bit of information about that. That was a pretty big day in the city. The mayor rang the bell downtown at what used to be the old city building, so that everyone would have a 30-minute warning before the plane landed. And it also describes, and I have that in my notebooks, it's not always easy to pinpoint a certain thing with just a quick glance, but that used to be a lake. So you think of Lakeside, it's still got a pond, and that was all drained. So that area is where this plane landed. Now, my question is, why did it land there in 1919 when the airport opened in 1918? I don't know.
You may have had trouble finding.
Well, okay, so someone, I think it was him, he followed the railroad tracks in. So that would make sense over on our neighborhood border by the tracks. So he could have come up those tracks from the West Liberty area and then went south to the farm where he landed. But that's just kind of a curiosity. It said that it took 35 minutes for him to come from Davenport to Iowa City. And of course, he was an hour and a half late. So people had to wait on planes even back then. But out of Chicago, they had weather issues. So he flew from Chicago to Davenport and then Davenport to Iowa City. 3,000 people were there to greet him. They said over 300 cars and many people came by bike and walking. So that's quite a story. Okay, then World War I, we have some connections in our neighborhood as well. And Luscombe would be one of them, Donald Luscombe. He lived on Marcy Street. And I'll see if I've got something there. Like I said, it's in my notebook. So if I don't, I just pulled a few pages out of my notebooks here. Here's Luscombe. There's a lot of information, many books written about Luscombe aircrafts and Donald Luscombe. He was in a well-publicized train crash. They just left on their honeymoon, his first wife, and there was this famous train crash west of Iowa City. And here they were on their honeymoon. They just left Iowa City, and then the marriage didn't last either. So, but anyway, Donald Luscombe is just a treasure trove of information. His grandfather was a publisher of the Republican newspaper in Iowa City. And Iowa City at that time had about 4 daily newspapers until the Press and the Citizen merged. Then the Daily Iowan started carrying more local news and became more like an afternoon paper. But before that, there were up to 5 local papers. Some of them were weeklies. And if you included the Czech newspaper as well. Okay, so anyway, Donald Luscombe. And then another interesting fact, I've lived in a Moffat house for 46 years. And so I do Moffat history too. And believe it or not, Howard Moffat's son is still living down in southern Texas. He's in his 90s. Howard Moffat had his children late in life. And I learned, we talk on the phone from time to time, and I try to get information. But Howard Moffat was a World War I pilot, which I think kind of adds a local interest to it. He had over 2,000 hours flying experience. And the war, the United States involvement ended before he went to Europe. But then he continued in the reserve and was a pilot through World War II. James Carroll was the mayor, and I'm going to pass him around. And he lived not too far from Plum Grove, just a stone's throw from Plum Grove. And here's a picture of him on the right. And he was a really dapper dude. He had Smith and Carroll butcher shop downtown Iowa City. When he retired from that, he became mayor. He served as alderman. His brother also served in local politics. And he was dedicated. He served 4 terms, probably the longest running or serving mayor in Iowa City history. And he came to meet Will Rogers when Will Rogers came to the airport. And the city had like the aviation carnival. Have you seen anything about the aviation carnivals? So the stores had sales and anything that they could figure out to tie into these things that were going on at the airport. Those were promoted as well. It was, you know, often seemed like aviation in the 1920s was used for promotion. That's partly why Luscombe got involved in it, because his grandpa was a newspaper man, his dad was a photographer, and then Donald Luscombe got involved more in business and advertising, and he used the planes initially for advertising, but then realized he could design a better plane. So he did just that. Then another thing that came across that was kind of interesting from that era of the 1920s, lots of information online. Now, I did not download all of that because I'm focused more on what's the connection to Lucas Farms. But I did think you might find this interesting, that when the mail flights, the airmail flights were going through, and it was a really big deal when they put in the spotlight. And I was thinking in terms of even with the mural, that might be an iconic image that you might not typically think, but they described it as we competed with the Northern Lights. So, you know, they all use a lot of hyperbole in the old newspapers, but, okay. So we mentioned J.J. Carroll, Will Rogers, J.J. Carroll, that I passed around his picture, he invited Charles Lindbergh to come to Iowa City. I've not found any documentation that he ever did, but he was invited maybe a couple of times. It was covered in the newspaper at least a couple of times. And then we get into the 1930s. And I just recently discovered this, that Amelia Earhart visited Iowa City. And this is kind of buried. This is her with the University of Iowa president at that time, Shambaugh. And I have the schedule. She was scheduled to speak March 31st, 1936. And I think Amelia is kind of interesting because I know the city on a lot of the projects wants to try to put diversity into any projects. And when I look at history, it is what it is. I just have to speak as a woman. You know, it wasn't until the 1960s that women even went by their full name. They'd always be Mrs. Tom Jones instead of Mrs. Linda Jones. But this little tidbit about Amelia, I think, is worth searching some more. So it was March 31st, 1936. This is an extra one. They have that one. And the Daily Iowan had the schedule. It was a time when they were having special guest speakers come to the university. Then they ran another story a year later, a year and a half later, because her plane went down. So they would call when she visited the university. I thought this one was just kind of fun. I don't have the date on this. I don't know how that happened, but this is just United Airlines schedule. It had to be from the 1930s, I think. So then we move into 19, and we have a lot, the whole city changed, you know, with the war. And we had a plethora of veterans in Lucas Farms because those were kind of modest towns. We say we're a modest neighborhood with a rich history, but there were a lot of those young men that either grown up there and hadn't left home yet, or who had just moved in with a young family who were drafted. And I'm going to give you a clue what I'm going to tell you. Let me just get this here. Okay, I'll talk faster. I'm almost done too. Another thing that astounds people is that Iowa City had at least 3 air raid drills and total blackouts. Have you ever heard that? Okay, so there's a lot of newspaper documentation for that as well. And I do that on my walking tour. I do sound effects to give people a clue, or music to think about the next thing. So in the probably about 1942 was the first one. And they stated that Iowa City was considered maybe a soft target because it had the airport, it had hospitals, it had the university that was already doing research. There were multiple reasons why they thought, could be a victim of sabotage or something. So citywide, 3 different times, they did these blackouts. And every time a plane would fly over the city and downtown, and Hans Jewelers, the old Hans Jewelers been there forever, had some kind of a neon clock that came on with a timer. And then everybody found out, oh, Hans Jewelers, because it was serious stuff. They had watchers assigned for every block and neighborhood. This was really serious stuff. Then it became apparent that, you know, that part of the war was maybe not going to come here, so that passed on. Here's another picture of someone who lived in our neighborhood, who was part of the Navy Flight School. And then this is Kenneth Bennett. I've got quite a bit of information about different people who were in aviation in several different wars, but Kenneth Bennett is really a tragic story. His plane went down in Germany, and it took almost 5 years to get his body back to the United States. But his dad was a prominent physician here. His brother was a military doctor, and this is quite a dramatic story. So then let's move past the war. Believe me, I have lots more stories than that, but that's just showing you. That's just the tip of the iceberg. So the Yeles, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, Jehle, if you've come across that name, they worked with Shaw until they established the Iowa City airports or flying service. And so here is their son when he was only 16 years old. And the first time he flew solo was when he was 10 years old. And his dad ran the flying service here. And so then he went on and still worked. Here's a picture of him doing maintenance on a plane. And he lived in our neighborhood. His dad lived on Highland, and Harold lived on Marcy Street. Again, we go back to this little pocket of a bunch of stories on Marcy Street. Then also there, I can't remember his name. Okay, it's Alexander Lipich. Have you heard of him? We've had several people who did research and flight research. So he lived 2 houses from where Luskin grew up. And then just 2 last points. One is the Gas Hawks. Have you heard of the Gas Hawks? Because airplanes were so popular after World War II. They got established, and one of their organizers, Larry Conover, is in the National Free Flight Hall of Fame. And this is model airplanes. But I don't know if you ever have events like that you could mesh with some history or something, you know, but that's okay. Yeah. And then the last thing I wanted to bring up is Viola Grapp, and we call her Valiant Viola. She was a widower who raised 4 children in like a 1-bedroom house in our neighborhood. And she and her family helped manage the airport inn. And so that is another angle of a woman being involved, maybe in less, you know, not like today, but in a more traditional role. That might be something too to think about, the impact that you, in that time when you literally had a restaurant here that you could look out. And I have quite a bit of information on Viola. I have one last little oddball thing here. I think it's just something I came across, and it's a race between airplanes and cars out here at the airport. That's 1915. Mm-hmm. So there you go. That was very quick, and I appreciate the chance to speak. We do a history day every year, and I'm always interested in speaking specifically to a certain group, or if you wanted to do some kind of a luncheon, like a box luncheon at the airport with a PowerPoint presentation, I'm open to that. Probably not until after July, because our history day takes a lot of planning, but I might hang around here a little bit, and you can talk to me afterwards. So thank you. Thank you so much. Sure. Yeah, a lot of information. Thank you. I know, that's why I came on to the Hanger Mural Project.
All right, Hanger Mural. So a couple of things that I hope we can get done tonight. Jenna, here, it sounds like I see you unmuted yourself. So
Yes.
One of the big conversations that we need to have is Jenna in her presentation gave us kind of 2 concepts. Both will in your packet. You can meet on, if it's not printed on the same page, but I should go back and forth. which of those two concept designs was the airport commission kind of favoring? And from there, we'll talk a little bit more about the fundraising side of things and how that looks and whether or not we're gonna do things that might impact what Jenna is about to try to put together.
What page?
13 and 14.
Oh, there.
So the first concept was, I call it a little bit more, yeah, I call it timeline. Still highlights several events over the course of the airport history. And then the second one is more, it feels more like it's dedicated to this, the aircraft itself that have been using the airport over the years. Jenna, you're welcome to jump in and kind of describe if you don't like my descriptions.
Oh, no, you are doing great. Yeah, I think for the time, they're stylistically very different. The timeline piece is a little bit more contemporary and colorful, obviously graphical. There's a lot more room to include specific historical events or people or anything specific that you want. So there's a lot more storytelling in that piece. And then the second concept is more traditional. And it's more of a high level representation of the airport, the different types of aircrafts. So it's not as specific in terms of historical events that have happened, but more captures kind of the progression of types of planes that are used, which is just more representational than specific events that are noted in the design. So it's just really, I think both are great. So it's really just up to you and what kind of a look and feel you want and what kind of feeling do you want viewers to have when they witness this piece. And what do you want people to think and feel when they make that connection with the airport?
5 hangar. I like the progression of the planes. Something like that, the concept to what's going on, not necessarily those everybody wants to pick in it, but I like that concept rather than just the splashy thing.
Yeah, I like the composition of concept too as well. It really looks great to move. And the other one, I agree with what Devin just said, that it allows you to put in maybe more specific individual things, but it just keeps more crowded to me and less artistic.
So I'm actually going to disagree.
Uh,
The thing I love about one is that it can be segmented so that when the doors on the hangars get opened, and they get opened and open frequently during the day when people fly, there's still an artwork there that can be, like Jenna, I don't know if this was your intention, but because you have 5 segments and we have 5 hangar doors, if somebody opens the hangar, the artwork is still, like, complete's not the right word, but it's still it is still a total work.
Yes, that is, sorry, go ahead.
But looking at this, I was thinking that the whole thing across, each one of those is an option for all the doors, not one of those on each door.
Well, but
So you could have a plane on one door and the next one have a different plane, and then so you could have up to 5 planes.
But what I like about it is I think that I don't disagree that it's not. The second one does not break apart as cleanly, perhaps, as a timeline. The first one, you can kind of have like a complete era. And then when that door opens, then you still have the other doors and you still have this work that you can progress through. I also think that it gives us a lot more flexibility because we're leaning on the fact that we're going to have donors and we're going to have people who are going to be contributing, and we're going to have to add elements. That feels like an easier design if we go down the path. And I think there was some uncertainty about how we go down that path. But when people contribute and have an expectation that they're going to have their plane on there or whatever, option 1 feels like it's easier to do.
I don't see how you, I don't see where it fits in on this. having different planes or having different things, it doesn't.
I guess I don't see how it doesn't. I mean, the point is, if somebody comes to us and says, my grandfather flew their plane out of Iowa City, here's an old picture of it, and it fits in the timeline. It's easier to put that plane somewhere in that segment,
In this,
in the timeline. Yeah,
there, I mean,
well, keep in mind too, that
Are
this
you
is not
looking at-
final
you're
design.
looking at this as each one of these being a hangar, is what you're looking at, or you're looking at this whole thing as being all crossed.
No, so the way that she designed it, if you
This whole
look,
thing across.
that whole thing is the building.
Okay, you're looking at it as all the way across, okay.
Yeah,
I was-
right, Jenna, that's correct, right?
This whole
On
thing across.
concept one, the tall, or the
That's where,
Yeah.
that's what the confusion is, okay.
the whole thing is.
Yes.
Very top, that's the entire building.
Yes, correct. That's correct. And I think to your point is that there are so many elements included in the design, and because it's somewhat geographical, that when one of the doors is open, it helps the design continues to flow, and it's not interrupted as much because of the shape of the elements in the design. And that was somewhat strategic also because of the corrugated metal that's on the wall, which will not interrupt the design no matter which one you choose. However, from a functionality standpoint and logistical standpoint, option one would be, I guess, easier to implement, for lack of a better word, just for implementation on the corrugated metal and how with the hangar doors and all the other things that come along with that.
Couldn't you do this?
But that's not to say, I mean, both concepts would work just fine.
Option two, instead of having each one of those all the way across the whole thing, have part of one for one door and then part of one for another door. So you're only ending up with 5 things.
We're on the same page, right? The tall, long, skinny one at the top, that's the whole building.
Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like either one as the whole building.
Well, it's got it. That's the whole point, I think.
No, you change. You don't need to do the whole building with all of that activity. What I'm thinking is, yeah, the first one could be the red plane. And the second building could be
Building or door?
the second door.
Yeah,
So
we're saying the same.
No, you're saying you're running the whole way across. I'm saying this is the whole thing. Or this is the.
No,
No, the-
Chris is talking the entire 150. This is the entire 100.
I know, I'm saying I don't want it that, looking that busy all the way across, but I don't like all of these colors all the way across. So why can't it be
The way
like
it
one of these
breaks
partway? across?
Well, the way it breaks down, this would be essentially door one, this would be door two, 4.
That's too busy for a door. That's too busy. for a door.
Or.
The aspect ratio of this whole project is essentially this, so you can't,
You
you
can't
can't
make
have
it
one
smaller.
airplane that wide, yeah, I mean,
It would, because it would make it like the size of an airplane.
I think we
Right there.
should focus on the mural in its totality and not worry about the total.
No, but I actually disagree. I think that if we need to look, I agree with you that we need to look at the totality. I also think the details matter. And if you open a door and half a plane is on it.
when
Then
you open the door, the meaning of the word changes.
I've seen plenty of comedy where it looks really, it's funny, but yeah.
You can't do that, but I think you could do it so you'd have part, so when you break it, there's still something above and something below.
I think that first one, in addition, is just too many little things to really appreciate this.
Yeah.
I think the second one is really just. I think it's inspirational.
I'm willing to go along with the second one, but I absolutely insist on us doing the entire thing for the entire.
Doing something like,
Yeah.
don't.
Oh,
like
yeah.
this,
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's to
Yeah,
go
this whole
across the
thing.
whole building.
Oh, see,
We'll build.
Yeah,
I'm not,
See, these are just.
I think we're just talking around each other, but. Yeah,
I like that.
I saw you saying, I just want what I heard you say, tell me if I got it wrong. was like, if we look at the pink flowers or the red plant, right, the first square there. I heard you say, I want that across the entire building, I don't care about the other ones. Oh,
No, it's just,
She just likes their argument.
I like the different airplanes, they can be smaller, whatever. I don't like the bright color and the miscellaneous little spots up there, it doesn't.
yeah, see, I'm gonna channel my inner Scott and say that that pops more and it's gonna draw attention. But, because he made that same comment.
Yeah.
I think 3 meetings ago. I'm willing to go along on the second one, but I think it's really important that we, well, I decide.
I'm interested in Jenna's opinion, so,
Okay,
so what do you think, Jenna? All these different arguments, my point is, maybe concept 2 would look better from the street, you could understand it better without binoculars. But
Well, it's, art is totally subjective. And everyone's got a different lens that they look through. And so I think it just depends on what kind of reaction you want. I'll say that concept 1, with all the really bold colors, it is absolutely attention grabbing and it draws you in. And I think it engages you and intrigues you to take a closer look. And granted, when you're driving on the street, that's not an option while you're driving by. But it's something really, it kind of sparks joy because it's so colorful and it's vibrant and it's energetic. So it's just a different feeling than option 2, which is more traditional, kind of a historical feel, aspirational, inspirational, what have you. So it's really, it's up to you guys. If I mean, does it matter which one my favorite is? Do you want to know?
You are the artist, but yes, we do want to.
Option 1 is my favorite because I like really bold colors, and especially on such a large wall, in a really wide open space, when people are driving by, it's going to be a big time attention grabber. Like those colors are going to radiate off of the hanger wall, and there's not going to be anything like that around it. So it's just going to really stand out. Versus option 2, which is beautiful and it feels like it's more a part of the surrounding space. So it's just, they're just totally contrasting styles. And I prefer option 1 based on my experience with mural installation, and you finish and you step back, these pieces that are just really grand and vibrant are well received. I mean, you just get a stronger reaction from them. But it depends on your demographic and who's looking at it and what their opinions are.
around town, show the different artwork that's everywhere. I really hate those that are the bright, bold, standing out and make you jump back and
But
see
you
the art.
notice
Still, I notice them, but I don't like them.
We're going to disagree about personal preference, and that's fine.
Yeah.
We're not gonna solve that. We just have to agree on what it ultimately, what the concept is. But one of the reasons that I think it not being readable from the road isn't a problem is because we want more people to come to the airport. So if they pull in because they're like, oh, that's kind of neat, I want to go see that, and they walk around the area, they're going to see the viewing area, they're going to have these signs that might pass out where we can see, they can walk in the grass, they can look at it. I mean, it doesn't have, I don't want a piece of artwork that's a soundbite that somebody just drives by and they go, oh, that's neat, and then they forget about it. I kind of want to draw them in and make them come.
I think that the first one definitely stands out a bit more. Like that in the timeline, my only question is a bit more technical as far as, is there anything against using the archive image without approval, or is there approval process, or is it a problem?
It might have trouble.
I used to work in the athletic department, and God, they are obsessive with their marketing.
And they're supportive of the airport. We have the right angles to go, I just didn't know.
I can find the people we need to talk to.
Yeah.
I don't know if this helps you.
But I didn't know, the tire hog isn't is in the picture.
Right, and I guess I still look at, maybe we have to talk to Wendy. I don't know if that's, yeah, I see it, I just don't know if that would be on us or on Jenna, or if Wendy knows how that works.
Well, I guess,
I think it's.
I think,
But, go ahead, sorry.
oh no, I think everything in the design at this point is a placeholder. And yes, there would be copyright stuff you would have to go through to get to use that. But if we couldn't use it, that's also an easy swap for something that's not trademarked. That could still represent that space and time. Like that was representative, I think, of World War II when the University of Iowa was doing naval pilot training. But
My
that
only-
is,
Sorry. My only other,
no, go ahead.
like the university uses the airport for is medical related. And I feel like that's a really kind of it's a really big thing. It's also a really big thing as far as making sure the community stays behind the airport is the intense connection. The medical side is not just a playground, not just a business tool, but the medical side is, at least probably a quarter of what happens at the airport, if not more. And it's also really, a really difficult thing to argue with. So having a medical helicopter or something like that in there, I think would be really valuable.
and I don't
Yeah.
know, need all of the words in there, because I would think that would be really hard with the corrugation
That could be hard, correct?
to do the words to be able to see that or
Well, and to be clear, this isn't the final design. Jenna, I don't know what what does your process look like when you work with other groups that commission work with you? What's your process for deciding and nailing down a final design?
Yeah, so usually there's a round of revisions and sometimes more. And if you guys are considering getting weigh in and consensus building through the community members or fundraising groups, are they going to have input on what's included in the design, or is that just reserved for this group of people here?
I think it would be reserved mostly for us. We haven't even
Great.
decided as a group whether we would, like, if we had a donor
Okay.
wanting $20,000, I guess we'd be more inclined to put their airplane on the
Right.
drill. Otherwise, we're not
Yeah.
getting, a swarm of airplanes for everybody who gives $10.
Yeah. So ideally, we would select which design, high level design you want to go with, which concept. And then from there, I would let your team review it, have some time with it, and then basically come back to me with markups or an email, and we can continue consultation about the design, and then I'll just make those revisions. And I'd like to do, I know we'll do a site visit and I'll need photos of the wall, almost like a blueprint, so I can see where the doors are. So if elements need to shift to accommodate interruptions in the wall, so that it makes sense from a design perspective and a functionality perspective. But that's kind of down the road once you kind of get in the weeds. And then once we sign off on it, I'll come and
okay,
install.
we're given some ideas and.
Yeah, but I don't want to be the only voice here that, like, if the commission really wants to go with design too, I mean, I'll back it, but like, I'm trying to make my.
Yeah.
Trying to make sure everybody's voice is heard.
When you look at how far back you really are from where the mural will be, the more it can stand out, the better. In my opinion. I mean, because that's the closest you'll be.
That's
Yeah,
better.
You know,
that's true.
unless it really is something that stands out, I mean, it's gotta be 300 feet back from the road, 500 feet back from the road or more.
Well, so and by the same token, color is great, but you also need to be able to see the details.
Well, that's, yeah, you're right. That's where words will be kind of difficult. From there, I mean,
Especially if you're moving.
especially if you move it, sure, yeah.
Okay.
But, and so in that, we may decide when you look at it from, it may be a lot less busy because everything has to be bigger. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could simplify it and bump up the size on things so that there's stronger readability.
I think it'd be amazing to have a picture of the front of the terminal, but that would be an intense amount of work for you. But like this
That would
one
be
section.
impossible.
I don't know how you would paint that, but I mean, it'd be awesome if you could, but it'd be challenging, I think. That like picture that said Iowa City Airport with the front of the building. We just put it, yeah. But anyway, but it looks great. Cool.
Yeah. Okay, Any other comments, or should we discuss fundraising, or?
Well, let's do a formal motion on which concept we're going to approve.
I'll let you do the motion. I don't wanna, I really like the idea of the timeline. I think
I like the idea of the
Okay,
timeline.
So why don't we,
And talk about if you're really concerned about having lots of contrasting colors, we can tone it down, like.
I like the idea of the colors, I just think it has to make some kind of sense from the road. If it's just, if it looks like something Picasso did, you know, I like Picasso, but, you know.
Talking earlier.
Okay, so can we agree that we would like
A time.
a timeline on the mural that has enough color in it that it can be, stand out for visual, but simple enough that you can see the concept for the timeline?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so all in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay. That's vague enough?
So.
Clear.
So let me try to put it a different way.
Okay,
For the base design, we're going with concept one. The base
The
look.
timeline, yes.
Yes, okay,
excellent.
okay. Concept one is the base. Now, from there, Jenna gets to go back and maybe simplify some of it so that it's not quite as busy, for lack of a better word.
Or that it accounts for the space and what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So that's step one, great. Next, we'll start the fundraising conversation because it, and then this will possibly have an impact on what you do, because if we do have a fundraising plan that's gonna involve the ability for somebody to donate a certain level, input an element into the artwork. Jenna needs to know about that as well, so. I guess next we're up to fundraising.
So, yeah, if there is interest in the Tiger Hawk that we should be kind of looking into.
It would not, I don't think it would not hurt to.
I think it's probably should get out of it.
The openings or the willingness of the university to let us use it.
The people who own the Tiger Hawk mark, that's the athletic department.
Okay.
So there is a, I have to go back because it's about 10 years ago, but I could leverage some resources at work and find you a contact to at least start with,
Okay.
if that's.
And like I said, I don't know if Wendy, if the city's ever, it maybe she, I don't know of any other artwork, I don't think that includes it with the city, but.
Well, they've got well, it was on Tiger Hawk, but they've got these banners in Iowa City on Dubuque Street that have the like formal font from Iowa, like that's the university's mark now. And it's city of Iowa City's on it too, so maybe we have some prior art that we can lean on for
Yeah,
collaboration.
if there's,
Yeah, this is joint venture.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
Maybe this can be a joint venture.
Okay,
Okay.
so, and then.
I have, sorry, this is Jenna. Could I email Mike you some follow-up questions after this, just about specific things for changes on the design?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
just, bear in mind that a lot of this is still gonna have to come up to the commission that meets once a month. Maybe we can do
Sure.
a special meeting if we need to speed stuff, but yeah, you're welcome to email me questions and things so we can get you better clarification of what we're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and really, I think my biggest question is when it comes to simplifying it, if there are things we can omit from the design, you know, the hierarchy it would be great if you guys could give me some guidance on that. So what are the most important things you want included in there? What are some things we could remove? If we need to prioritize, what are the most important pieces on there? Things like that.
Sure.
And I can take a stab at it, but you guys are the experts on that information, that content. So working together on that would be helpful for sure.
Might not be a bad idea, just to plan a strategy session to take a look at this.
Yeah,
X out,
Do that, you know.
spending.
I think that would be great.
Yeah. So you'd
Yeah.
probably like us, give you some guidance probably as soon as possible, if I'm guessing.
Yeah,
I think it would be very hard to do anything with a person on it. We could probably eliminate having a picture of a person. And words, I think it would be just impossible to see from a distance. Does that help?
I think some words, they'd have to be large.
They'd have to be.
You're gonna have to have words that kind of fill up the entire hangar. There's, I also.
yeah, these are exactly the type of things that I think some discussion around would be good, whether that's now or if you want to have a separate strategy meeting, I'm happy to jump on it or whatever would work best.
But I think words are necessary, and like I said, if it gets them out of the car and they walk around the airport, we only benefit. But we'll get
We
into
can
that.
get
when
to
we get
details.
to that portion.
Have to walk out there and get a better picture. I'm not sure.
That's like, it's going wide angle and
Yeah.
it distorts it.
Mhm.
I think it's actually closer.
I think it is. I think if you were just,
That's
somewhere
probably.
right around here,
But still having it.
but that's still pretty small.
It is, yeah.
That's a small wall for words.
Okay, so should we plan to get back here within 2 weeks?
Yeah, Jenna, send me questions, send me whatever you need.
Okay,
With the commission, we'll plan a special meeting.
Yeah.
To kind of walk through what, like some of these elements that you've got in the concept that what's really perking everybody's interest and maybe aren't feeling so much, and we'll get you some.
yeah,
Be back.
Jenna, do you have?
sounds great.
Our agenda for this meeting, did you get a copy of that?
I was not able to download it. Something about cookies on the website would not allow me to. If someone could email it to me directly, that'd be great.
If you would email her at least the PowerPoint presentation that I put together with the history, because
Yeah,
I have a PowerPoint in there that has some of the highlights of the history, many of which actually you picked up on
hmm
your initial research. But I think we'd want to kind of just take it through from that initial flight with the Red Devil and then airmail and then Boeing and then we should certainly move into the present with. I agree completely with Matt. Matt, that we should have paramedical helicopters in there,
yeah, yep.
and if we can get
And
logo, that'd be fine.
yeah, that's great feedback.
But how about the airport's logo?
Yeah,
In terms of trying to look into the future, that's kind of something that came about in the last 5-10 years. You're wanting to get
Right.
out there.
Something to keep in mind when using logos is rebranding and the longevity of the piece of art. And if, when was the last time you updated the logo, and are there plans to ever refresh the logo?
Well,
No,
we didn't have
but
one
something.
3 years ago, so.
Yeah, the good news is,
We're not aiming for a new one anytime soon.
Yeah.
Great, okay,
we're about to create new signage that has the logo on it and everything, so that would be a nice
oh, good,
present.
okay, so it's here to stay, that's great. Okay, well, should I jump off for the rest of the call and just connect?
You're welcome to listen in on the fundraising talk if you want to, or if you need to go, either way. We'll keep it online. Here, so it's your choice.
Okay, I am gonna hop off we got kids running around upstairs. But let me know if there's anything important that comes from the fundraising portion that I should be in tune to, and thanks for having me, and I look forward to moving it ahead.
Absolutely. Thanks.
And
very much.
I just, also, I didn't get to say to this entire group, thank you so much for trusting me with this project. I'm thrilled, and it's gonna be great. It's gonna be so great.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
So too.
All right, thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Okay, on the fundraising.
Yeah, so, Scott and I met with Lynette Marshall, who is the president of the Iowa Foundation. she said she funded it with the university, so she's my next door neighbors. So she has her finger on the pulse of how you can raise substantial funds. And she also understood that our initial goal is pretty small, if you consider $30,000 small. In order to be able to pay for this mural. But she had some specific suggestions. She thought that we should have a group of what she calls champions, so sort of volunteer fundraising helpers who have various different kinds of ties, community, business people, aviation related people, other users of the airport, possibly including the university, and them help us with identifying people that we might contact now. We have a fairly short timeline, so the other possibility as we're gearing up to get that kind of group of champions together, might be Mike and I were talking recently about just contacting people that we know who have hangars on the airport, clearly are frequent users of the airport. That's why we're Matt briefly about if you can think of some people we should contact that might be interested in donating something for towards the so that's, and then I put together this PowerPoint that sort of gives a brief history of the airport and then goes a little bit into our plans for the future. And this is the sort of thing we could present to that group or to other individual potential donors as to raise the excitement level about doing this when the right time comes. So that's what that is heading towards. And what is lacking, of course, is our terminal project design, that kind of thing, as we're moving away from the mural and thinking in bigger terms.
I have a question, the fundraising group, the money would be going to, then didn't they say we couldn't have it be specific? So if somebody wants a specific claim, they couldn't be doing that?
It can't be an active price.
Okay,
So like,
but if it's history for them, they can do it and have it be a claim that's from their families, but it can't be united lien on such and such.
like Jenner wouldn't do something with their local.
Well, and I think we also can't say, I mean, we have to maybe smart center again. Like, if you donate X amount, then you get to do this. And she said it had to be structured as more of a like thank you that the commission kind of decides. I think afterwards almost that, you know, this is a donor or group of donors that we want to thank. And this is how, you know, how we would do that. So it's kind of, I think there's a nuance kind of to how you structure it.
You know,
Yeah. It's more of a, if you contribute more than, and I'm gonna use Tancher because I just paid Tancher my annual thing for, make sure I can get early tickets. But if you gift above $200 or $1,000, if you gift above this level, you can work with us on
the concept.
you know, $30,000 is what we're looking for. We have limited space, you know, $5,000 for a number, and you limit that to maybe 3, maybe 4. Yeah, I think that's probably good, and then the rest of them we can acknowledge on like a plaque in the terminal building, and break down maybe. Yeah, you know, maybe for $2,500, they have to get people up on it.
I guess my concern is if you're gonna give them the input to do it, and you've already approved the design, it might be kind of difficult. Like, what if they gave you $30,000 and they just hate, take the concept and.
Well, then already doesn't have to donate, that's kind of.
Yeah,
Like, we're coming to, this is the base concept. This is what
Okay.
it's gonna look
so
like.
take the
Be
concept.
careful how we phrase this, you're right, we could say, we let you pick a design element,
Yeah,
something like
you just don't want them to reinvent the wheel
Yeah.
because they paid for it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
It's almost like you have to go to them and say. Because it can't be transactional, right? It can't, it sounds like. If they have an expectation of getting something in return for it, aside from their tax deduction.
Right.
Then
And
that
that was
becomes
my
problematic.
understanding when I talked to her, right?
yeah, yeah.
So it really needs to almost be done out of the goodness of their hearts or because they want to see this
And,
completed
and we'd be interested
in talking.
in talking with you.
Yeah.
There's a design element.
So we need to do this in the next week. We're gonna be meeting with her with ideas in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean,
So we need to contact, send out a letter to everybody who has a hangar here and say, we're looking at fundraising for improvements for the airport. Our first emphasis is going to be on the mural for this such and such thing. And we are looking for donations and just leave it as sort of a something like that, is sort of a vague. And then based on that kind of thing, then we can do follow-ups.
I don't know if it has to be that urgent, I mean, I would like to be able to present them with at least concept. Don't you think, I mean,
yeah, no,
and I think if we do come up with that sort of donor, then I'm pretty sure Jenna can figure out how to put it.
Work around
carefully.
something.
Well, and I think the point is, I understand that you want to thank donors, but you wouldn't have to allow anybody, I guess.
yeah, we don't have to. do
So-
That whole offer. We can just-
So when you could come up
Give us
with a
money.
concept, you could get in your donations, maybe if there was one. Like, that's much higher than everybody else, or two, I mean, then you could go back and say, an appreciation for your donation, we'd like. If you're interested, we'd like your input on,
But I'm thinking we need to get started on something.
The city has a naming rights policy. I think that this could align with that. It doesn't get into transactional. I mean, if those dollar amounts correspond. Have you looked at that? Rach?
I haven't looked at it lately. I briefly looked at it up the last time you brought
I
it up
can't
and
remember
then
the amount.
it's drained from my head again and I didn't look it up.
And I don't know if it's current either, but because that was from a long time ago, but it was used for the Vision Iowa project, a true.
Yeah, I think that's the last time it's been updated.
Yeah, I think so too.
So that'd
So
be on naming rights.
But it could correspond with your concept, is what I'm suggesting. It would give you kind of some baseline or guidance.
so you're saying we need the concept before we can advertise. You're saying we don't need to.
Yeah, so we could show them.
Yeah.
Okay,
So it's not gonna be exactly this, like, we'll
Okay.
massage the language, so it's not understandable, but
But
it's
it's
not
something you
exactly.
can send out soon.
In the theme of this, this is what it's generally gonna look like.
Your PowerPoint.
I think that,
Two.
I mean, I understood what you were saying, you mean. That we would present this. to people. That it's not just, here's the brochure, and then just kind of wait, but actually be more proactive about it.
well, that was an initial concept, I mean. So that there'd be a smaller group of people who we could talk to. Who volunteer to really help us with fundraising. Or maybe have more contacts in the community than we do individually. Of business people, et cetera.
Isn't it two things? One is the small part and then one is the whole, which is gonna take a lot of money. to do.
Well, the terminal project, there's gonna be some grant money stuff involved in that as well, so this isn't, we don't have to raise $3 million to complete the terminal, hopefully.
If we do, this terminal's fine.
No, I think Judy's on the right. We do have kind of two separate but
Yes.
similar things going on. We do need a more immediate
Yes,
outreach for the mural.
right.
We have a lesser need to do an immediate outreach, but also still need to.
And then how do we do that? So
Together
we just send
for the long term.
we just sent a letter to everybody who has a hanger here and say, hey, you know, suggested donation is, $500.
Don't even give a suggestion, just with. But I think we do two things. One is you get this part going and then people become aware that we're doing fundraising things. And then you get the groups showing what's being done, and you do the PowerPoint and you go for, now that we've got this part going, we're going to be doing this whole thing too. So I think that needs the big donors.
One idea that we came up with, or contacted hangar owners and other aviation related folks who are using the airport is to have a neighborhood meeting. Actually, you know, invite people to come for an event in one of Jet Air's hangars perhaps, and have you know, some beer and wine and popcorn or whatever, and actually give a presentation. And ask people to give some money, because you know, you get these things in the
Yeah,
mail
that
and you throw them out. And then are we just gonna then just drop it at that point? You know, how many people are really gonna respond? I think Matt had a perspective on this, right, in terms of fundraising you've tried to.
Well, when we tried to do Fly Iowa back in
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
whenever that was. I mean, I think Jet Air ended up giving half the money and made all the calls, made all the calls. And everybody I talked to, I feel like this community has so many really, really important things to give money to. That, you know, in general, I mean, you can't go through any drive-through without donating $1 from every, that I feel like the airport just didn't have as much traction to be able to ask for something like that. Whereas Fly Iowa and other communities like Ottumwa, they busted through their budget. Busted through the fundraising mark in the first few months because people are like, well, what are we gonna do to get this community going? You know, it's just.
So we need your idea to do it.
Well, that's one way, that's one
Take
way.
more
We
time.
should we
Yeah.
advertise, we put something in the paper, in the press citizen.
You do multiple things. It's
Yeah.
not just one or,
Yeah.
you know, one is done.
You have to
Leverage the next door. You love the contacts that the social media coordinator that we've leveraged for like the survey, right?
We can do something through that.
It can't be just mail because my generation will toss it in the recycling. It can't be newspaper because, you know, it will not be newspaper. That will hit like 5
My
people.
generation.
Yeah.
is newspaper.
It was, yeah. I'm like, how do you get the free paper? So like, you know, it doesn't happen. And then you've got all the other, it's gotta be strategic and it's gotta be multifaceted.
Yeah, and
Hangar owners is a good starting place because that's a known quantity and we know how to reach. We did it that was one of the starting places we did it for the sim. Maybe we use that as a starting point too. Because you remember, I don't know, were you here when we
Yeah.
bought the simulator? Yeah, so.
that was, and that's how we did that. I got a list of the FAA of all the pilots within 100-mile radius and. Yes, invitations.
So what do you need us to do now?
Well, obviously, the first thing is we need to have our little meeting about the design.
I don't even think we need to wait for that.
Okay, and we need to draft some kind of letter, letter or brochure or something that will go out to membership. So I'm happy to do a first draft of that.
Yep.
And the next few days. We need to, and I think you were gonna talk with Fuel about putting a link to the community foundation.
Once we get the information, what we're looking for.
There is a community foundation in Johnson County account now that can receive these funds.
Yep. So we'll have a button on.
And I think she had maybe mentioned that she would take a look at any like brochures or anything
Oh, yeah.
as well. So that's, if you want them to take a look at that.
Probably should make sure it's what they're willing to agree to.
Yeah,
Yes, I mean,
And it just needs to be clear that the money needs to go to the foundation and not the city, because if it goes to the city, then it won't go to the foundation, we can't transfer it.
right.
okay. That's something you and Scott. And he had a letter. Initially.
I thought he had a brochure or something at
Did you-
one point too, some kind of draft.
Give you a place to start it.
Let me look through my emails, see if I have that, and I'll see what we did for Fly Iowa and the other stuff, I know they're a little bit different.
Cause I almost think on his draft, it was a while ago and maybe he was using murals from other
Yeah.
towns to sort of show this is what we're thinking about doing.
Well, we have
Okay. Sounds good.
her initial concepts.
So we can go.
Um,
Okay. We've got to start.
Yep.
We go on to airport strategic plan, which is. We don't have people here to finish doing it, but.
So that's the good news. We're not gonna take an hour. So I sent you the information. That's what we need to refine, Mike and I talked. We want all 5 of you to have input for that. So if you're gonna have a special meeting and there are 5 of you there, I would love a piece of that action. If that works for you. Otherwise, we can wait till the May meeting. But if you're gonna have a special meeting, I think that might be the better choice. And so what we'll do next is we'll finalize, or we'll get in final draft form the strategies and the success indicators. And then I'll provide you with a full draft document. Okay. So, once you have that special meeting, all I want are all of you to weigh in.
Be there.
So if that's a special meeting, great. If that's the May meeting, that works too. And we'll talk after the mayor's presentation on the cities or the council's strategic plan. So that way we can kind of, have that framework. Does that make sense? Sound good?
Yep.
Did I forget anything? Okay, so let me know if the special meeting works and then. I think that's
That'd be good.
all right, thanks.
Okay. Construction project.
Yeah.
FAA grant projects.
All right, runway 25 threshold relocation renamed when for cleanup, is more consistent weather that's not gonna be either 90 degrees or 30 degrees.
Yeah, because it's just paint, right? Is really what.
Both, yeah, it's like 90% paint. It's not a lot of stuff, but there is some cleanup out there. The 1230 displaced threshold, so what I do need is a motion to defer this. We have the bids, I don't have the bid tab, otherwise that'll be part of the resolution, but you do get it. The base bid came in spot on. It was 775,000 was the engineer's estimate, came in 774.
$350.
Yeah.
That's.
Somebody. The 2 alternates are a little bigger than we would like to see, but if we don't do them with this project. I mean, that's the end.
Remind me what the bid.
These are the reals.
Oh, right, okay.
So,
Okay.
Carl's recommendation after we talked about this is for all 3. We talked with the FAA at the conference and
Oh, that's what you're talking about.
yeah, that's what I was talking
Okay.
about. He was on board with all 3. He just wanted to make sure that they had the money.
Yeah.
Typically what happens is we give the bid tab, we give basically the low bidder bid packet to them because it has the Buy American certification and the gold information. All of that goes to the FAA. They kind of take a look at it and give you yeah, great, we concur, go. Kind of a letter, and that's what we don't have at the moment, and I don't want to get into the position where, we've accepted the bids and. Tentatively awarded a contract and then have the FAA be like, well, we really don't have money for A and B, you can do the base bid, but. So,
So we need to defer.
so yeah, that's where the defer is coming.
Okay, I move that we defer the resolution, accepting bids and awarding contract 82309 for the runway.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
No.
All in five,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, all in favor is fine.
Terminal area study, same.
Similar situation there, just different FAA person. Junior is Junior Lindsay is the FAA planner that deals with Iowa. Had a chance to talk to him. He is expecting comments from the environmental group. For the work order and, yeah, the same thing, rather than approving something, have to go back and amend it. Just easier to defer, and we'll get all of that sorted out and. Hopefully have, with both of these, or at least with the runway one, expect the need for a short special meeting. If you wanted to try to combine everything into that strategic plan, I'll try to or organize something with everybody there. Otherwise, expect a 5-minute meeting to once we get that concurrence letter to public hearing. No, it would be to award the.
Oh, gotcha, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Meeting for that.
Okay, yep,
Yeah.
well then, I move that we defer the resolution of approving work order 10 with Bolton.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Got it. Okay. Solar power project.
Solar power project, with CNT, they've got, basically all the utility bills. Most of the hangar plans, I've got a couple more hangars I'm trying to find, which is the original construction of the university building and the old shop. Those are 1970s and 1940s vintage.
Plans.
So,
Get out of my.
yeah, I'm not 100% confident I'm gonna find them, but I still got a little bit of digging to. Otherwise, they're gonna come up, they're gonna take a look at things that they'll just have to do a little bit better inspection review type thing on those buildings. If I can't come up with the plans.
Iowa DOT grant.
South T hangar infrastructure, they have started work over there. We are gonna have a little bit of an issue because there's a lot more topsoil over there than we anticipated. So they're gonna have to dig out another couple of feet of topsoil.
We get set prices for the work because we anticipated some, but we anticipated about a foot and it's more than 2.
It looks like they're adding dirt along Highway 6. As you're heading out of town across from Procter and Gamble, looks like they're adding dirt filling in.
For here or?
Excuse me, yeah. Filling in, I don't know if they're gonna add another lane bike trail. Okay, but they're putting dirt through there. I don't know if they're buying dirt or what, but you might be able to find some places like that to get the dirt too.
Well,
Also on the way to the dump.
we've got other areas that we can use it too, so it's not
Oh,
like,
okay.
yeah, we can use it for the runway project and,
Okay,
So what the cost of digging.
yeah,
that,
yeah, basically.
I was having to call. Okay, the 23 program.
23 program, terminal building and wayfinding, so I gave everybody a handout, Carl and John, from, John Mose from Jewel, we met a couple of weeks ago. We did kind of pick out a good spot where the signage should go, and that's kind of in between that last couple of trees. Right, nope, that's the next one, right here, first and second, yeah, between the first and second trees on the drive, might be easier if I.
That's actually go down. I think.
So it'll be like right in here, yeah. That way you catch it before you hit the turn, they would point you towards OBL.
Will there be a problem putting the sign in before those dead dying trees are taken out? They won't fall over on top of it or something? Is that?
It's
Just a
possible.
thought?
We don't have any plans right now to remove trees.
Yeah, that's
But I mean, because they're dying along there. I mean, I love to get the signs, and I just want to make sure we can.
Oh, yeah, no, I know. I've talked
They
to
can
Mike,
do the stuff like
I've
that.
mentioned to Mike too, that we gotta try to do something about those trees. I think it's just. We just have to prioritize it,
Right,
but if a tree falls on it, then it belongs to the insurance. So,
okay, then we're fine. Okay.
One thing that I could do in the back of the plans and put together, but we could specify that the mounting, the foundation is that it can be removed. So that the frame isn't embedded in concrete, but maybe folded to the concrete or something, so easier, if you have a project to remove trees.
Yeah.
Or storm or.
Yes,
something.
yes, but it would be easier to fix
Not that
and
we
replace
those.
than have it move.
I've seen cars where it slip. I actually had one car side slide from those trees once. So it's not totally uncommon that you can lose your side of your car.
Okay, yes, I think that's a good idea. Okay, possible, hold it.
Yeah, Carl,
Okay.
I like that.
Okay,
So we're looking at that. Part of the reason you have the packet in front of you is just so we can make sure we're on the same page of what we are doing. And as I recall from the conversations, we're doing an internally lit monument sign. So that would be essentially the night view of the internally lit that would then reach three. That one.
yeah,
Ready?
Yeah.
And then when it comes to the brickwork. We're still planning on those brick blocks, but. I don't recall if we made a decision on if we were gonna try to put a sign on top of it. If you look at this page. Here where it shows the brick inlay. If you look on the very left, you can see a new sign on the end of the building. There had been some conversation about having that on the brick. Or not doing it at all.
You mean, was it?
Glass block.
Or on the
glass block?
block, sorry, yes,
Yeah.
I'm saying.
I think we decided just the plain glass block.
Yeah, I think we decided, I think you're right. I think it was a plain glass block and if we were gonna do the sign and having like.
The conversation was, is there gonna be an internal wall covering the glass block on the inside? And I don't think there should be. I think we should let the light in. As opposed to having a glass.
It's gonna get awful cold in that room, we know.
Yeah, I
Glass
know.
blocks are. They're more insulating than these windows.
I think that's limiting the.
I think also because pilots use it for sleeping, I don't wanna get it too bright in there.
Well, why are we using glass block in there?
Because it looks like that stuff over there on the other side of the wall.
Trying to manage brick on that without being obvious.
That was the intent of the concern.
And I believe that there would be concern if you wanted to. Have glass block all the way through, then because there's
Structural.
you'd have to look at the structural issues, it would increase the cost.
Well, it was a door at one time.
That's true.
Yeah, no, I don't think that what's there now with that plywood is supporting.
No,
So,
Yeah.
Of course, once you pull the plug.
I had a floor to ceiling glass block wall in my previous home, right next to the bathtub. Wasn't cold at all.
But the light would still be coming through it.
That was the whole point, yeah.
I think the other negative on it too would also be if you did go all the way through, you'd like to need to do something different with flooring there and then. It just
Yeah.
potentially expanding the inside changes, but I'm not against it, if it works, I think it'd be kind of cool,
A
even.
lot of work for a building, we don't know what we're doing with the next couple of
That
years.
is,
I think,
that honestly sells me right there. that
yeah,
If we don't even know what we're gonna be doing with this building. In the term.
But a multicolored LED light display. Not like that.
yeah, I think. Thank you.
So that's really all I had for this, just to
Yeah.
confirm,
Okay.
Carl and I knew exactly what we were doing. Because it had been so long and it's kind of sat on the shelf to the point where.
Yeah.
we did care.
I don't remember the details of what we
Yeah.
agreed to with the glass block wall and the sign. That I think if you said one of the designs had one that was off the sign, I think we liked that.
Yeah,
But I do distinctly remember the internally, but because that was gonna be. I think we said that was better.
Yeah.
Way cool.
Okay, anything else?
okay, FY 24 program.
Carl is putting some pricing together for, finishing out the, taxiways down here, as long as I got this up. Again, this is the one we're building this year. So we're looking at, that strip that we had to cut out, and then the strip over here that would also fill in this gap. And he's also putting some pricing together for me for, the cabinets up here for the fuel storage tank.
We have some tentative prices, but I'm not gonna share because we reached out to 3 different suppliers, manufacturers. To get some updated costs, but like Joe helped me, but I thought he was low, so I called, made a couple calls, he made a call. We haven't heard back from him yet, so, because it was just in the last few
But
days.
we'll have those,
That'll be for next.
yeah, we'll have those for at least an approval of what the application is gonna look like. And those applications are due May 25th.
Yes.
Was the date, May
Mm.
25th?
5 p.m.
And Carl, one thing that I'm sure you're already thinking about too is like this piece there. Mike intentionally moved it up to be further away for me to get to, but this piece here, so these utilities run like along this fence and down. And so one of the things we were thinking about is having someone put a building here, and then if the National Guard never did come through with this, you could potentially put buildings all the way down this stretch. And just wanted to make sure that we do this utilities in a way that you'll be able to add buildings without having to dig them up and move them again.
We did that on the utilities on what we're building now, we're encasing the ones that are there.
Okay,
So to protect them, and we would do the same thing
okay.
over there. And it's rather than trying to route them around or anything around the computer build, we would probably do it just so that there would still be a gap in there. In between buildings,
Sure.
and then we'd be protected.
Next,
Parking lot additions, it looks like they're gonna need to come back and do a little bit of extra seating, because, the stuff that's out there isn't really germinating all that great. But other than that, that's, I know the city engineer that was involved is reaching out. Putting in, getting the final numbers, the final payment and change orders, quantities put together, so we should accept it. A little early. It's
still early.
it's early, but you can still see a lot of determination. In the first seed that's been out, but you can see what's growing. It might not be full, it might, but yeah. So that's. Future projects, have anything there unless the airport commission has some ideas that they want us to look at. Budget.
It's okay.
This is April, so we've got May, June, we've got 2.5 months of the fiscal year left. All in all, we're not doing too bad. I think we are running a little bit of a deficit, just by virtue of the strategic plan that we're doing and a couple other things, but it's not a terrible amount.
But the flights are picking up and so.
Things are picking up, fuel flows are, I think fuel flows are a little bit down compared to last year. Last year was a pretty good year. But they're still within the realm. Expectations. The outreach plan is just on there, without everybody here to discuss, but yeah, it's one of those things where if we are gonna do that. We need to probably figure that out and just get that done, get that assigned, or. If we're not gonna do that, then the leaders in the agenda. It's up to the commission on what they want to do. That's your guys' idea. The general thought was, almost like what the city council is doing with strategic plan, you'll divvy up and like somebody goes to Parks and Rec or somebody goes to
Meetings, so
meets with the
Like-
transit folks and
like we have a neighborhood meeting here.
trying to connect our operations with other groups that
Yeah,
might be beneficial for partnerships.
Okay.
I could just wait till next time when we have this year.
Yeah,
Okay.
I want to do, well, what if we want to volunteer those that didn't come? They might not like
They would like that, okay. It is.
Events, the only change there is we do have a date for the drive-in movie, that's August 5th. I don't think it's technically published, but it's been broadcast out there by folks, so.
You know, it's in the pamphlet that they had.
Is it? Okay. But I looked on the website, I haven't seen any of the 20 and 23 dates for some of the guys on the
What's the
website.
pamphlet I got? Yeah, it was just the neighborhood. thing. Okay, flight training reports. All right.
Here's our, maintenance sheet, I don't think it was in the back, balance, over, here you go. Well, it is, of course it is, perfect. Well, anyway, nothing super significant, other than in March, we still had more snow on the ground. It's kind of hard to remember already, which is good, but anyway, we had, more snow on the ground, and then now we're already prepping for mowing and picking up trash, like that, I would, the way we kind of picked up, things are changing over. The only thing that was different is, there was the aircraft sales board downstairs. Mike and Stacy kind of worked out buying them a new board that was like an encased one, but and then we split it with the airport, so the airport kind of like announcements for the meetings inside that. And we saw a big aircraft sales.
Yeah.
That looks nice, so that's good. And the wind's enclosed, and the wind doesn't rip everything off.
It's better than taking stuff to the glass wall.
Yeah,
By the flexibility.
See, that's another place.
Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, it would be.
Yeah.
It would be.
okay,
So it's not all for that side of stuff. As far as jet air stuff goes, we John was still like Sunday, Ohio Public Airport training was yesterday. Jet air is a sponsor for that. You guys actually went, so something you'll report on, I'm sure. The helped out with the neighborhood meeting this the day. I thought that was really great. Really good to do, really good to get folks here. I was really nervous because the one gal mentioned right before I got to speak that about trees coming down. But I think it was actually directed at dead trees in the park next door and not related to the airport. But she said that before I got to speak about that. Oh no. But
you were okay.
okay, that was, I mean, really good. I'm glad that we did. Posting things like that, so we should try to be as familiar with as possible. In general, activity across the industry, we're seeing that everything is pretty much going back to the you look at fuel flows and stuff like that. Everything else, I would say that something in that realm is going to be probably so back out to in terms of charter activity. Yeah, but that is a normal, it's not like it's everything's spiked up. So anyway, let's see. Oh, yeah, last thing is the women's basketball points. We had 4 different groups chartered now for those CB. Like that, for the basketball championship. And that was actually pretty cool because of the groups that chartered down, one of them was like a regular type festival, but the other one was, or the other 3 airplanes were like a couple of different business where the immediate family. And then they're never started before and went together and then now it's going to be really like almost out developed that word of people that hadn't tried it before.
Yeah.
We're really big.
You know, I'm here.
Well, and it was pretty cool when they returned, so everybody with it, they're fine, but I gave them the people. That's their hardcore airplane and another 3 or 4, another 4 airplanes all arrived within about 30 minutes of each other, right on the flight where they're all coming and then pilots when they kept asking the controller for clearance for Iowa City, the controller finally said, what is happening in Iowa City? But, you know, and but anyway, I counted because I came out there was 49 passengers came to the airport and left 30 minutes. And all of them were packed full of people. Yeah.
I mean, maybe.
There's someone so because they're just everybody literally at the same time. Yeah, they were getting out of each other's way. But anyway, so no, that's all good stuff. That's all I've got.
Thank you.
That's the first I've heard about that. That's.
Yeah,
that's-
yeah.
So, but regarding that, are those the sort of people we should be sending this brochure to, this fundraising?
Well, like I said, the ones that we just tried the airport probably wouldn't be as good as, but I would think that. It'd be kind of, so what do you have saved for the mural, or committed for the mural already in the terms of the grant versus the total ask?
We only have 8,000.
8,000 was probably.
5 to 38,000, so we need
Sure.
another 30.
So just the more people we send it to, but then again, we don't want to like offend your customer.
No, and I think the biggest things would be whether or not, I don't know, we've always been trying to figure out what that connection looks like between the university and both the medical and other side versus, first medical and athletic and travel use, whatever
Right.
side, but it'd be nice to see somebody like that, that unashamedly uses the, not necessarily unashamedly is not the right word, but there are a lot of enthusiastically use the airport. A lot of our clients would prefer that nobody knows that they charter flights from time to time.
I see.
You know what I mean? And so that's what's difficult.
Yeah.
They say, well, what does so and so have to do with the Iowa City Airport? What's the connection there? And you know what I mean? That's the, you know, have to be a little bit sensitive to that. If this was New York, people would be like, hey, I'm there all the time. But in Iowa, everybody's very quiet about what they do with that. Seems like,
I'm not rich.
I'm not rich, exactly right.
Peterborough.
Peterborough would be totally, anyway, that's my only 2 cents there. But something like the university is not a user, and obviously they clearly have a need, and so it's not anything they really have any.
I mean, you can limit this to people who have hangers,
No,
What about the athletic department? What
Yeah.
about the art department? I don't know, just any other community boosting organizations we should be talking to.
And I mean, I was sitting like the university when they did the air care and had their own airplane for a while, I mean, it was black and gold, they were all for the fact.
Yeah.
It was to promote the hospital, promote the medical side, and. So I mean, there is a vein there, we just gotta. Sorry.
Oh, just fine, right person.
Personally, we have the brochures, then.
Yeah.
we can-
then we can report. Okay,
Well,
thank you. Thank you, Matt. Any other commission member reports of anything?
Just the conference yesterday was really interesting. I think we both almost speak for you, but I think at least I came away with a better understanding of the FAA grant process.
Absolutely.
Which is
Not a good understanding, but a better understanding.
Yeah, not a good understanding. At least knowing the different pots and like how it works out, so.
Okay.
That was helpful, and then. Yeah, I thought it was a good use of my time. Obviously, a good use of his time.
Obviously,
Yes, I do.
and I would add, it's very clear that he's a leader in this organization. Knows his stuff, so.
Yeah.
He's so we're very great.
Oh, you didn't get promoted?
Everybody stayed the same for another year.
Okay. Well, thank you. Okay, I think this is, nothing else? Staff report and.
Yeah, just to echo what Chris Moore said, and Matt, airport, the Indian conference is always valuable. It usually gets FaceTime with the FAA folks that are writing the grants and involved in our projects and funding our projects, and then again with the state folks. And you get a little bit of heads up on just all of the things we are keeping track of, whether it's on the legislative side, whether it's on the funding and the money side, and all of the key players. Just also as a staff, and I don't know if this isn't necessarily a staff report, but a reminder for commission members, because we've had this happen a couple of times, and Jennifer and I talked about it a little bit, but when it comes to the agenda, we do have a habit now of reading through things rather quickly. We need to make sure we contain conversations to those items when they're up, rather than going back. Just keep that in mind for the future. It's not a problem to take however long it needs to take to have the conversation. Have the conversation. I don't want to cut off the conversation. But when we are done with the conversation, we need to be done with the conversation. Outside of that. Let's see, May, the early part of May, the first weekend, I think I'm gonna have a long weekend on that. I'll be taking that Friday off at least. I don't have any plans, any other planned trips coming up that I know of, or any kind of the Four States Aviation Conference. Do the next big conference that I'm planning on going to. That's in, I think it's the last week of August, you get the 23rd and 24th.
Carlson.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Sounds good.
Anything else?
Just a question about what this next meeting looks like. Looks like it's gonna potentially be a bigger one, the special one.
So, yeah, I guess, and we can do a couple of things, and it's probably gonna depend a little bit on timing, because I don't know when the FAA is gonna give me that concurrence letter. Once, we've got a couple of dates to be mindful of, which is the grant applications need to be to FAA by May 5th. They would love to have them sooner. Actually, we're waiting on their permission to award contracts. We can have firm numbers to finish the grant application. So when they give us that letter, that'll really trigger the need for the special meeting to award the contract. If at the same time you guys want to do the strategic plan and or mural conversations, we can plan a longer meeting. Otherwise, we're looking at just a quick 5-minute meeting that only needs 3 people, just enough for the quorum to vote. Then we can still plan a more. So I have a better plans, planning section, I guess, for lack of a better term.
I think what we need from Jenna's opinions on from everybody and what to do with each segment of the mural, right? So maybe we could do some of that on our own and separately.
Yeah. Yeah, we can certainly funnel
Yeah,
that seems.
You know, I'd rather not have another long meeting every 2 weeks. So.
Yeah.
I think it'd be better if we try to do the mural comments sort of individually.
I can filter those.
And then if there are large differences of opinion there.
And we'll just bring it back to the meeting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Figure it out.
Okay, that sounds good.
So really, from my understanding, what Jenna wants from us is look at each of these 5 segments, like proposal 1, and tell her, you know, which ones, what edits we might make.
Yeah,
So we can each kind of do that.
it's like the one section that has, yeah, it literally is a picture of the front of the terminal.
Yeah.
Maybe that doesn't need to be part of the.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then are we gonna do the,
strategic plan.
as part of this meeting, because we still have to have another meeting whenever we get the.
I think we have to wait. Let's do that.
The FAA,
In May,
like,
'cause
do we just want to wait until May?
she was talking about waiting till after the mayor.
I think to get all 5, to be honest, to get all 5 of you together, probably easier to try to target May for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
And it still may not happen.
In the interim, Judy and I can send out an email that said, hey, everybody, just heads up. 1, we've got the mayor coming out to the commission to present the strategic plan. It's probably a really good idea that everybody's there.
Okay. Give you a feel for what's. So the next
Thank you.
meeting will be.
So the next meeting will be to be determined. Pending the FAA giving us the award concurrence, and then the next regular meeting will still be May 11th.
And then Mike, could you just send everyone on the commission just that 1 page of proposal number 1 from Jenna and a little some instructions, please just make some notes on each segment.
I can do that.
To simplify it.
Yes.
Yeah.
The 3 of us and what the other 2.
Yeah, they'll find out.
I'll shoot out a sort of emails this morning.
Are we done?
I move we adjourn.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're done.